Nice one. First, though, have salacious newspaper stories had their day? Or do we, the public, have a right to know what people get up to in their bedrooms, public toilets, dungeons, or just about anywhere else for that matter, including my house? Or does everyone, even the rich and famous, even those who sell wedding photos to glossy mags and then play hide the sausage with someone who's not their partner, even naughty vicars, do they all have a right to privacy? Newspaper editors clearly feel the end is nigh for the sex story after Formula One chief Max Mosley won his case against the News of the World yesterday. The paper said the public had a right to know of Mosley's predilection for being spanked by prostitutes. Why? Because they wrongfully alleged he enjoyed Nazi-themed orgies, and Mosley's dad was Oswald, an infamous fascist, so you can see how the argument goes. But creeping European law means it's getting harder and harder to justify any kind of sex story at all. Freedom gets a spanking, says The Sun today. That's the News of the World's sister paper. But then even the Daily Telegraph is in despair. Mosley victory will keep adultery secret, as its page one headline screams. So how much longer, they ponder, before we end up like France, where privacy laws made it impossible to report in France that former President Francois Mitterrand regularly cheated on his wife Danielle, mum of his 3 kids, with Mistress Anne, and even had a love child by her, Mazarine. Wouldn't you want to know if a politician who espoused marriage and family values as the key to a happy society was actually a dirty, rotten, two-faced love cheat? I know I would. And what about a footballer or movie star who takes money from a glossy mag to coo about his happy marriage and then goes on to cheat behind his wife's back? Surely we have a right to know about that, or does his right to privacy take precedence? It strikes me the Daily Mail is right on this, that Britain's judges, wary of European law, are putting privacy ahead of morality. Larry?
I think, you know, Britain's judges, on the whole, probably don't read the News of the World or Hello or OK.
Well, I bet they do, to see if they're in it. Adult babies.
I think, you know, most of us read those kind of newspapers and magazines because we love gossip.
Yeah.
And we love the idea of somebody else's relationship being in more disarray than our own. And then we all use the defence of public interest to justify us being able to read about somebody else's sex life. I have no problem if it's true. I have a problem when newspapers print stories about people that are entirely untrue and that they just think, well, that person hasn't got enough money to sue. I've had stuff printed about me, and I'm a journalist.
Yes,
it's entirely untrue. Entirely untrue. I'm like, but I'm not going to sue, am I? And I do think that if...
I think you should have a word with Private Eye, though, because I think they're really out of line.
Never complain, never explain, as they say, don't they? I think that if an MP... I particularly think that the MPs who then lecture the rest of us about we should not be single parents, we should be staying married for 100... and then are having affairs, I want to know about them, because it's the one thing that... Can you imagine if they thought they could get away with having loads of affairs?
Do they not have a right to a private life as well?
Not if it contradicts what they're telling the rest of us. Well, if they are telling us how to behave, no.
Then where does that leave the movie star who sells their wedding to a glossy magazine with their happy wife, and then you discover that they're actually a dirty, rotten cheat?
I think, again, if there's somebody who is making money out of giving one image to the public, we have a right to know if they're lying to us. If that movie star has not sold their story and has not gone around saying, I've got this fantastic happy marriage, then I think, yeah, maybe they should be left alone. Well, again, naughty vicars are in the pulpit telling the rest of us how to behave. And I think that we have a right to know about hypocrisy. I mean, I don't think anybody should stand about lecturing other people about how they should, you know, live their lives. I mean, I think, you know, there should be someone... It's when somebody wants us to believe they're perfect, that irritates me, and I want to know if they're lying.
Hugh?
Well, it's the Max Mosley case is sort of fascinating, really, isn't it, in lots of ways. But I think if this new law comes in, it certainly makes it more difficult for comedians.
Well, it's been there... Basically, European law has been there for a while, and it's when victims of these stories go to court, if they go to higher court, either on appeal or as they pursue, the higher courts tend to look over at Europe and say, well, we've signed up to EU politically and judicially, we have to take their bearing. So it's coming in slowly through the back door, although Tony Blair said it never would.
But do you think is French society more hypocritical than British society? I mean, it's just something about the British that we love a salacious story.
It seems... that's the question, isn't it? I mean, it seems perverse to us where we know everything about our politicians in terms of... Because of Profumo, really, it was such a big case, you know. Effectively, a man could have been passing on secrets. Never knew whether they did or not. But the idea in France that they didn't even know, or the people didn't know that their president was actually staying during the week with his mistress.
Yeah, but you kind of think that they did. They sort of almost expect it, don't they, in France?
But then if they did, then surely you should be able to write it in a free press.
Maybe it's more interesting. if you can't write about it, you know, because then you really can properly gossip about it. But on the Max Mosley case, it's an absolute... These kinds of things are gifts for comedians. The double entendres that have come out of, you know, Max Mosley is after damages. Of course he is. You know, all that sort of... He's going to... He wins either way. If he hurts the newspaper or the newspaper hurts him, it doesn't matter. That's what...
One thing I thought...
That's what S&M
when
is.
I was coming home last night, there were the editions of the evening newspaper were out, and I thought it was really interesting because it said Mosley wins, in quote, Nazi orgy, close quotes, case. I thought, in what way has he won? Because it says Nazi orgy in big letters.
Biggins, what do you make of this?
Well, I agree totally with Larry on this, but I do think that I get very angry with a paper like the News of the World, where they do print a telephone number saying, if you have a story about a celebrity, please ring us. And I think that is very unfair. I think if a situation comes out where a story comes out which is true, and there are moralistic views on that, then I think that should be printed. But I don't think they should go looking for it.
What about the individual private life? Why is it of any concern, leaving aside politicians and vicars, right, people who lecture us about our life, why is it of any concern to the rest of us what people get up to in their bedroom? It's got to... if you're going to have a private life, and surely everyone is entitled to a private life unless they are a public servant.
I couldn't agree more. I think, you know, within the bedroom, I think as long as you're doing it with people of a consenting age, then that is absolutely private. But, of course, everybody wants to know what's going on in that bedroom.
Because that's the funny thing is, you know, when we sit there and think, oh, you know, it's a disgrace, these salacious stories, the News of the World, the biggest selling English-language newspaper on the planet, there's a reason that people love reading about it.
Of course they do.
I'm dying to read about my sexual prowess in bed.
I don't think you ever will, though.
So depressing.
But ironically, it's like the thing that has always amused me about the News of the World is that is precisely the thing that they don't ever print. They never print news of the world. They print news...
News
just
of the world.
News of a very small part of the world.
Let's throw it open to you. Is everyone entitled to a private life? Are you entitled to read about what goes on in people's bedrooms? What is public interest in these cases? Let's hear what you've got to say.
OK, our first caller thinks we should be more aligned with Europe. It's Leon, line 1.